They told me to leave my parents' house on New Year's Eve, not just me. Me and my 12-year-old daughter. The words landed quietly. No shouting, no slammed doors, no dramatic buildup. Just a calm statement spoken across a dinner table, like they were discussing weather or traffic. My older sister said it first. "I think it's best if you don't stay tonight," she said, folding her hands together. "And maybe it's better if you don't come back for a while." For a moment, I didn't respond. Not because I didn't hear her, but because my mind refused to arrange the words into something real. Leave. Don't come back. Tonight. New Year's Eve. With my child sitting right there. My mother nodded immediately, her lips pressed into a thin smile. My father stared down at the table, tracing a crack in the wood with his eyes, like he was waiting for it to say something so he wouldn't have to. They didn't look angry. That was the part that hurt the most. The house smelled like roasted meat and champagne that cost just enough to pretend it was special. Gold paper party hats were stacked on the counter, still folded, still untouched. The television in the living room was counting down the last hour of the year, voices cheering somewhere far away, completely disconnected from what was happening in that dining room. My plate was still half full. The gravy had cooled into a thin skin. My fork hovered above it, suspended, like my hand hadn't gotten the message yet. My daughter, Claire, had eaten exactly 3 bites and stopped. She was lining peas into careful rows, then rearranging them over and over, a quiet habit she'd developed without realizing it. Something she did when the air around her became unsafe, but no one named it. Across from me, my sister, Vanessa, sat straight-backed and composed, her posture perfect. Vanessa always looked like she was presenting herself for approval, even now, even at a family dinner. She had learned early how to look reasonable while making decisions that cut deep. Her husband, Brian, nodded slowly, as if he agreed with whatever was happening but didn't want to be quoted later. He was good at that, being present without being responsible. The kind of man who could watch a storm tear through a neighborhood and ask where the flashlight was. My mother dabbed her mouth with a napkin. Careful, delicate. Like this was a polite gathering, not the moment my family decided I no longer belonged. "It's better this way," she said softly. Better. That word did a lot of work for them. It wrapped cruelty in something that sounded reasonable, necessary, mature. I looked at Claire. She hadn't lifted her head, but her shoulders were tense. Her grip on her fork had tightened just enough for me to notice. I remember thinking, very clearly, so this is how it ends. Not with a fight, not with yelling, just a quiet decision made without me. I could have begged. I had begged before. In different ways. Softer ways. Ways that didn't look like begging unless you knew what to listen for. I could have explained myself. Listed all the things I'd swallowed over the years to keep holidays peaceful. All the moments I'd smiled through because it was easier than being called dramatic. But something inside me went still. It was the same stillness I'd felt years earlier in a hospital hallway. Phone pressed to my ear. Listening to a stranger tell me my husband was gone. That moment when your body stops scrambling for options and accepts that something has already broken. "Okay," I said. The word surprised them. Vanessa blinked. My mother froze with her napkin halfway to her mouth. Even Brian stopped nodding. "Okay," Vanessa repeated, her voice tightening. I nodded. "Okay." They waited for more, for tears, for anger, for me to raise my voice so they could later say this was my fault, that I was unstable, that I overreacted. Instead, I added calmly, "Then you won't mind me doing this." For a moment, no one spoke. The television kept counting down. 39 minutes left in the year. Somewhere outside, fireworks cracked early, impatient, hopeful. I pushed my chair back and stood. Then I walked into the kitchen. I'd hidden them earlier that afternoon, when no one was paying attention. Behind the serving trays and unused wine glasses, 3 envelopes, Thick paper, heavy in my hands, in a way that had nothing to do with weight. Each one had a name written carefully on the front. My mother, my father, my sister. Vanessa frowned when she saw them. "What's that?" Brian scoffed quietly. "Are those cards?" My mother laughed once, short and nervous. "Don't be ridiculous." I picked up the first envelope. "This isn't guilt," I said quietly. "It's consequences," and I tore it straight down the middle. The sound was soft. Paper always sounds smaller than you expect. But in that room, with everyone watching, it landed like a gunshot. My mother's smile cracked. I picked up the second envelope and tore it too. Slower this time. Deliberate. The rip stretched, sharp and final. My father finally looked up. His eyes flicked from the torn paper to my face and back again. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. Vanessa stood so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Stop," she snapped. "What are you doing?" I picked up the third envelope. I didn't hesitate. I tore it cleanly down the middle and placed the pieces on the counter in 3 neat piles. No yelling, no speech, just paper and silence. Behind me, I heard a chair move. Claire was standing near the hallway, backpack already on, shoes half-laced. She hadn't asked what was happening. She already knew. I held out my hand. She took it, and together, we walked toward the door. The cold air hit my face the second we stepped outside. It wasn't the gentle kind of cold that smells clean and quiet. It was sharp, biting, the kind that forces your lungs to wake up whether you're ready or not. Frost glittered along the edges of the driveway. The sky was dark, heavy with the promise of midnight fireworks and other people's celebrations. Behind us, the house glowed warm and bright through the windows. Yellow light spilled onto the porch, making the night beyond it look even colder. For a split second, I wondered how many times I'd stood in that exact spot before, trying to convince myself that things would be different next time, that maybe this holiday would be easier, that maybe this year they'd see me. I didn't turn back. Claire squeezed my hand as we walked down the steps. Her fingers were small but firm, like she was anchoring herself to me. I opened the car door for her first. She climbed in without a word, pulling her backpack onto her lap and buckling her seatbelt carefully, the way she always did. She didn't cry. She didn't ask questions. That silence scared me more than tears would have. I got into the driver's seat and closed the door. For a moment, I just sat there, hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. My heart was pounding, loud enough that I thought Claire might hear it. Then I started the engine. Behind us, the front door flew open. "Wait!" My mother's voice cracked, sharp and high, nothing like the calm tone she'd used at the table. Footsteps followed, fast and uneven. My father called my name, his voice strained, unfamiliar. Vanessa's heels clicked against the driveway, then stopped abruptly as she kicked them off, running barefoot toward the car. 5 minutes ago, they'd told me it was better this way. Now they were chasing us into the cold. "Come back," my mother cried. "We didn't mean it like that." I pulled the car into reverse. Vanessa reached the edge of the driveway just as I shifted gears. Her face was pale now, her composure gone. She was holding something in her hand, one of the torn pieces of paper crumpled and shaking. "Just stop," she shouted. "We can talk about this." I didn't look at them. I backed out slowly, carefully, then turned onto the street. As I drove away, I glanced once in the rearview mirror. They stood there together, framed by the light spilling from the house. My mother clutching her coat around herself like she was the one who'd been wronged. My father standing stiff and silent. Vanessa bent slightly forward, like she couldn't quite believe this was happening. The house grew smaller behind us, then it disappeared. The road ahead was dark and mostly empty. A few cars passed in the opposite direction, their headlights bright and brief. Somewhere nearby, fireworks cracked again, early bursts of color against the night sky. Claire stared out the window, her forehead pressed lightly against the glass. For several minutes, Neither of us spoke. I drove with both hands tight on the wheel, my thoughts racing in circles. Anger rose and fell in waves, followed quickly by guilt, then something else, something steadier and harder to name. Finally, Claire spoke. Her voice was quiet, almost careful. "Are we in trouble?" The question landed harder than anything my family had said. "No," I said immediately. "No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong." She nodded, but she didn't look convinced. We drove a little farther. The road curved, taking us away from the neighborhood I'd grown up in, away from the house that had shaped so much of my life. "Grandma doesn't like me," Claire said suddenly. I felt it in my chest first, like a sharp crack spreading through something fragile. "What makes you think that?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She shrugged, still looking out the window. "She likes Vanessa's kids more. She hugs them first. She gives them the good presents." Her words were simple, matter of fact. The kind of truth kids say when they haven't learned yet how adults hide things behind excuses. I swallowed hard. "That's not because of you," I said. "That's not your fault." Claire was quiet for a moment. Then she said, softly, "I try to be good." The world narrowed to that sentence. I pulled the car over. It wasn't a dramatic decision. Just a small rest stop off the road, dimly lit, empty, except for a vending machine humming to itself. I turned off the engine and turned toward her. "You don't have to earn love," I said, the words coming out thicker than I expected. "You don't have to be quieter or better or smaller to make people care about you." She looked at me then. Really looked at me. "But you did," she said. It wasn't an accusation, just an observation. Kids notice everything. I reached across the space between us and pulled her into my arms, awkwardly, over the center console. She smelled like shampoo and cold air. "I'm sorry," I whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry." She leaned into me, her body finally relaxing. The tension she'd been holding all evening slipping away. After a few minutes, she pulled back and wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her jacket. "Where are we going?" she asked. That was when it hit me. I didn't know. Home was more than an hour away. I hadn't planned to drive back that night. We were supposed to stay at my parents' house. That had been the plan. The whole reason we'd come. It was late. Claire was exhausted, and I wasn't about to drive a tired child through dark roads while my hands were still shaking. I started the engine again. "We're going somewhere safe," I said. A few miles down the road, I pulled into the parking lot of a hotel off the highway. Not a run-down motel. A real hotel. Bright lobby lights, clean windows, a place that smelled like coffee and carpet cleaner. Inside, the front desk clerk smiled at Claire like she mattered. That alone felt like a gift. I booked a room with 2 beds. Claire kicked off her shoes and climbed onto one of them like she'd been holding her breath all day. I sat on the edge of the other bed and stared at my hands. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Once, twice, again. "Mom, Dad, Vanessa." I turned it face down. Claire asked if we could watch a movie. I said yes. We ate vending machine snacks on the bed and watched something cheerful and loud about people learning the true meaning of family. Claire laughed at the silly parts. I laughed too. But it sounded different now. When she finally fell asleep, sprawled sideways across the bed, I picked up my phone. Dozens of missed calls, messages stacking up. I didn't answer. Outside, cars hissed past on wet pavement. Fireworks exploded in the distance as the new year arrived without us. Inside that quiet hotel room, with my daughter sleeping safely beside me, I realized something had shifted. Whatever came next, I wasn't going back to the way things were. Vanessa is 7 years older than me. That difference mattered in ways no one ever said out loud. 7 years was the distance between being cherished and being useful, between being protected and being expected to understand. Vanessa was the miracle child, the one my mother used to describe as easy and special, like she'd arrived already knowing how to make everyone happy. Strangers complimented her in grocery stores. Teachers praised her manners. Relatives leaned down and told my parents how lucky they were. I stood a step behind her, holding the shopping cart. If Vanessa cried, the world stopped. My mother rushed in, arms open, voice soft. If I cried, I was told to calm down, to stop being dramatic, to learn how to handle my emotions better. Vanessa got dance lessons. I got told to watch her while Mom ran errands. Vanessa got, she's just passionate. I got, why can't you be more like your sister? Holidays made the difference impossible to ignore. Vanessa would open gift after gift while everyone watched. She squealed at exactly the right volume, hugged my mother at exactly the right moment, said thank you like she'd practiced it. My mother loved that performance. Loved having a daughter who reflected well on her. I'd get something practical. Pajamas, a sweater, a book. Then I'd be handed a trash bag and told to clean up the wrapping paper. No one ever said it outright, but I understood my role early. Vanessa was the center. I was the support. The strange thing is, I didn't realize it was wrong for a long time. When you grow up inside a system, you assume it's just how the world works. Gravity doesn't need an explanation. It just exists. By the time I was a teenager, I'd perfected the art of shrinking. I learned which topics made my mother sigh, which opinions made my father go quiet, which jokes made Vanessa roll her eyes. So I stopped bringing those things up, or I stopped having them at all. I learned how to be agreeable, how to apologize first, how to smooth things over so no one else felt uncomfortable. People called me easygoing. What they meant was invisible. I left for college believing distance would fix everything, that maybe if I wasn't around, they'd miss me. That absence would finally make my presence matter. They didn't miss me. They missed having someone to compare Vanessa to, someone to point to when things didn't go her way, someone to blame when the mood shifted. That wasn't the same thing. I met my husband, Michael, when I was 26. He wasn't loud. He wasn't flashy. He was the kind of man who listened all the way through a sentence before responding. The kind who noticed small things and quietly fixed them. On our third date, I told him a story about Vanessa and my mother. I laughed while I told it, because that's what I'd always done. Turn discomfort into humor so it wouldn't feel like a complaint. Michael didn't laugh. "That's not normal," he said. I remember staring at him, confused, like he'd misunderstood the punchline. He said it again, softer. "That's not okay. No one had ever said that to me before." We got married a year later. My parents acted supportive in public. Vanessa acted thrilled online. Her husband joked about Michael being brave to marry into our family. Michael smiled politely and let it pass. Michael worked as a construction engineer. He loved building things that lasted. He worked long hours on big projects, renovations, commercial builds, places where mistakes couldn't be hidden. It paid well. Not extravagantly, but steadily. And because I was apparently incapable of not trying to earn my family's approval, Michael and I started helping my parents financially, quietly, $200 a month, every month. Sometimes more if something came up. A broken appliance, a medical bill, an emergency that always seemed to arrive right after Vanessa bought something expensive. We never announced it. Never asked for credit. My parents never thanked us properly. They accepted it the way people accept a utility. Like it was simply something that existed now. Something they were entitled to. Vanessa took credit in her own way. "I told them we'd figure it out," she'd say at family dinners. Her husband would nod and add, "Family takes care of family." Michael would squeeze my hand under the table. A quiet reminder that I wasn't imagining things. Then Michael died. A routine site inspection. A scaffold platform that should have been secured. It gave way beneath him. They called it a tragic accident at first. Like weather. Like fate. The investigation called it preventable. I remember the phone call. sitting on the kitchen floor with my phone pressed to my ear. The way my body went cold in places I didn't know could feel cold. Thinking, this can't be real. This can't be my life. After the funeral, the world didn't pause. Bills didn't stop. Groceries didn't become free. Claire still needed school lunches, clean clothes, bedtime stories, and suddenly, I was doing all of it alone. The money we'd been sending, my parents stopped immediately. Not out of anger, out of necessity. I could barely keep my own lights on. My parents noticed the missing money faster than they noticed my grief. My mother started calling more often, but not to ask how I was doing, to ask, in a careful voice, whether I was managing. Vanessa asked if I was being smart with my finances. Her husband joked about life insurance and laughed when no one else did. I didn't ask them for help right away. Asking my family for anything felt like handing them a weapon. But 1 month, I had no choice. Claire got sick. I missed work. The car needed repairs. The numbers didn't add up. So I asked. They sent a small amount. Then my mother posted about it online. A long post. A sad emoji. A smiling family photo. Sometimes you have to step up for family, she wrote. Even when it's hard. Vanessa commented first. We're always here for her. I didn't say anything. I stopped asking. I stopped explaining. And I stopped believing that being smaller would ever be enough. The settlement didn't arrive the way people imagine money does in movies. There was no dramatic knock at the door. No oversized check. No sudden sense of relief. There were lawyers. Endless emails. Forms that asked the same questions in slightly different ways. Meetings where people spoke softly and carefully, as if lowering their voices could make grief easier to manage. The company stalled. Their insurers moved slowly, deliberately, like time itself was a negotiating tactic. For months, it felt like shouting into a void. I hired someone to handle it because I couldn't carry both grief and bureaucracy without falling apart. I focused on surviving, on keeping life moving in small, manageable pieces. Get Claire to school, make dinner, pay the bills that absolutely couldn't wait. I stopped thinking about the settlement entirely. And then, 2 weeks before New Year's Eve, it finally came through. I was sitting at my kitchen table, a mug of coffee growing cold in my hands, when I opened my banking app and saw a number that didn't belong there. For a full minute, I thought it was a mistake, a glitch, something that would correct itself if I refreshed the screen. It didn't. I stared at it the way you stare at a stranger who looks exactly like someone you lost. Familiar and impossible at the same time. It was life-changing money. Not lottery money. Not private jet money. But enough that the tightness I'd been carrying in my chest for months finally loosened. Enough that the future stopped looking like a narrow hallway with no exits. I didn't celebrate. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't buy anything extravagant. I didn't suddenly feel different. I still woke up tired. Still packed Claire's lunches. Still missed my husband in quiet, sideways moments. But the fear was gone. And the first thing I thought, because apparently I am committed to learning lessons the hardest possible way, was I should help them. My parents were getting older. Still working jobs that exhausted them. Still drowning in debts they pretended didn't exist. Vanessa was always between opportunities, in the way only people with safety nets can afford to be. Her husband had a talent for turning other people's money into shared plans. I told myself this was my chance to fix things. That maybe if I walked into the new year with something real, something tangible, they'd finally see me differently. Not as a burden, not as the one who needed help, but as someone who mattered. I prepared 3 gifts, not checks, not cash, documents, carefully arranged, thought through, each one designed to lift a weight I'd watched them carry for years. Mortgage balances, debt statements, future security. I tucked them into 3 envelopes, and I drove to my parents' house on New Year's Eve, believing against all evidence that this time would be different. They didn't know any of that. All they saw when I walked in was the version of me they'd created in their heads. The broke widow, the quiet daughter, the one who showed up to family gatherings carrying invisible need. They watched me closely all night. Every comment sharpened just enough to cut. "You look tired," my mother said as soon as I walked in. Like exhaustion was a character flaw. Vanessa glanced at Claire's dress. "Cute," she said. "Very simple." Her husband asked, with a straight face, whether I was still in that phase where money was tight. I smiled, swallowed, nodded, because it was New Year's Eve, because Claire was watching, because I still believed, stupidly, that I could earn my place if I tried hard enough. And then, somewhere between the main course and dessert, Vanessa decided she was done pretending. She set her fork down like she was putting down a gavel. "We need to talk," she said. My stomach sank not because I was surprised, but because I knew exactly what kind of talk this was going to be. The kind where I wasn't allowed to have feelings. The kind where my reactions would be used as evidence. She leaned back in her chair. "It's been a lot, and Mom and Dad agree." My father didn't look up. My mother didn't protest. Her husband chewed slowly, like he'd been waiting for this course. And then came the sentence that changed everything. The one that sent me and my daughter into the cold night. The one that made 3 envelopes meaningless in a matter of seconds. After we left, after I tore them apart and drove away, my phone didn't stop vibrating. Calls. Messages. Voicemails piling up. They didn't know what I'd torn. Not at first. They only knew something valuable was gone. And when they finally understood what it was, panic replaced certainty almost instantly. But by then, I was sitting in a quiet hotel room, watching my daughter sleep. By then, the choice had already been made. The silence after New Year's lasted exactly 3 days. At first, it felt unreal. No calls, no messages, no sudden check-ins disguised as concern. It was the quietest my phone had been in years, and for a moment, I let myself believe that maybe they were embarrassed. Maybe they were reflecting. Maybe they were sitting with what they'd done. I should have known better. On the 3rd morning, I opened social media while Claire ate cereal at the kitchen table. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. It was a habit more than a choice. And there it was, Vanessa's post. A photo of her standing in my parents' living room, smiling in front of the same tree we'd been sitting beside just days earlier. Her husband stood next to her, arm around her waist. My mother was in the background holding a mug, positioned just right, like a candid moment that wasn't candid at all. The caption was long. It talked about family, about betrayal, about boundaries, about how some people take everything and still demand more. She didn't use my name at first, which somehow made it worse, like I was a rumor instead of a person. Then she did. She wrote that I'd shown up on New Year's Eve, looking for sympathy. That when they finally set boundaries, I'd lost control, torn up something important, and stormed out. She implied I was unstable, ungrateful. And then she mentioned the money, not directly, not honestly, just enough to poison the well. She wrote that I'd received a large settlement after my husband's death and refused to help my own family. That I'd chosen to punish them instead of doing the right thing. I stared at the screen, my hands cold. So this was the story now. Comments poured in. Aunts, cousins, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Family is everything. Some people never appreciate what they have. Praying for your parents. My phone started ringing before I finished reading. An aunt telling me I should apologize. A cousin asking if it was true about the money. Someone else saying I was tearing the family apart. I didn't answer. I made Claire lunch. I helped her with homework. I watched her color a picture of a house with a crooked roof and a sun in the corner. I wondered how many adults it took to look at a child and decide she didn't deserve a seat at the table. By that evening, something inside me shifted. Being quiet had never protected me. It had only made me easier to blame. I opened my banking app and scrolled back through years of transactions. $200, Month after month, sometimes more. Quiet help that had never been posted, never announced, never used as proof of character. I took screenshots. Then I found my mother's old post from months earlier. The one where she'd publicly praised herself for sending me a small amount of money after my husband died. The sad emoji. The implication that I was struggling because I couldn't stand on my own. I screenshot that too. Then I wrote. Not a rant, not a novel, just the truth. I wrote that I'd been told to leave my parents' house on New Year's Eve in front of my child. That my sister said it. That my mother agreed. That my father stayed silent. I wrote that my husband and I had financially supported my parents for years. Quietly. Without posting. Without praise. I wrote that the one time I needed help, it was made public like charity, and I wrote that I didn't storm out. I left because my daughter was watching. I hit post, then I turned off my phone. Within an hour, the tone shifted. People asked questions. They asked why my parents had posted about helping me. They asked why I'd been sending money if I was so irresponsible. Vanessa's comments grew defensive, then angry. Then some disappeared altogether. By morning, her post was gone. That afternoon, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and felt my stomach tighten. My parents stood on the porch, Vanessa beside them, her husband hovering just behind, holding a cake like it could undo cruelty. I opened the door just enough to stand in the frame. "We just want to talk," my mother said, her voice suddenly sweet. "We've all had time to cool down." Vanessa smiled. Not the smug one from before. A different one. The kind you wear when you want something. "We didn't mean what we said," my mother rushed on. "You know that." "You meant it enough to say it," I replied. Vanessa stepped forward. "It was a moment. A moment," I repeated, "where you looked at my child and decided she didn't belong." Claire appeared behind me, peeking out from around my leg. My mother's face lit up. "Claire, come give Grandma a hug." Claire didn't move. Her fingers curled into my shirt. Vanessa's smile faltered for half a second before snapping back into place. "We can fix this," she said softly. "We just need to be together again." I heard what she didn't say. We need access. We need control. We need the door open. "No," I said. My mother blinked. "No? You don't get to throw us out and then show up with cake," I said. "You don't get access to my child after proving you don't see her as family." My father finally spoke. "You're being cruel." I looked at him. "You taught me how." Vanessa's eyes flashed. "Don't do something you'll regret." I smiled. Just a little. I already did. And it wasn't tearing up paper. I stepped back, closed the door, and locked it. It has been 8 months since that New Year's Eve. Long enough for the noise to fade, long enough for the shock to settle into something quieter and more permanent, long enough for the truth to stop feeling like a weapon and start feeling like solid ground. The settlement was $2 million. I didn't say the number out loud back then. I didn't even like thinking it in my head. The moment money gets a number, people stop hearing anything else. Grief becomes a transaction. Loss becomes leverage. I had planned to give my family a quarter of it. Enough to pay off my parents' mortgage. Enough to clear the debts they pretended didn't exist. Enough to give them a retirement that didn't feel like panic disguised as routine. Enough to give my sister a reset instead of another scramble. They didn't get a single dollar. Instead, I bought a modest house outright. Nothing flashy. No gates. No long driveway. Just a quiet place in a neighborhood where kids ride bikes and people wave when they pass. Most of the money went into long-term savings and conservative investments. The kind of boring decisions people make when they're thinking about stability instead of appearances. Claire has a college fund now, a trust, an emergency cushion so her future never depends on people who decide her worth based on convenience or control. Money didn't erase the grief. Michael is still gone. Some mornings still hit hard. There are moments when I reach for my phone to text him about something small and ordinary before I remember. There are nights when Claire asks about her dad in sideways ways. Questions at bedtime. Pauses where she expects someone else to answer. The difference now is that the grief isn't tangled up with fear anymore. We're sad, but we're safe. Claire sleeps through the night now. She laughs more easily. She doesn't flinch when adults raise their voices on television. She doesn't ask why she wasn't hugged first. She knows this house is hers, through other people. I've heard what happened to my family. My parents sold their house. Retirement plans fell apart. Debts they'd ignored for years finally demanded attention. Relationships fractured under the weight of resentment and blame, and the part that truly broke them wasn't just the money. It was knowing how close they were. They talk about it to anyone who will listen. Replay it. Rewrite it. Tell it as a tragedy where the ending was stolen from them. That quarter of the settlement haunts them more than the loss itself. I thought keeping the money might haunt me too. It doesn't. What would have haunted me is teaching my daughter that cruelty deserves rewards. That love is something you earn by shrinking. That being quiet is the same as being safe. We don't see them anymore. Not because I hate them, but because I finally understand that love without respect is just control wearing a softer face. Sometimes, Claire asks why we don't visit Grandma. I tell her the truth. In words she can carry. Some people don't know how to love kindly, I say. And it's okay to stay away from people who hurt you. She nods. Accepts it. Moves on. Kids are better at boundaries than adults give them credit for. On New Year's Eve this year, we stayed home. We made pizza, watched movies, counted down together on the couch under a blanket that smelled like laundry detergent and warmth. At midnight, Claire hugged me and said, "This year feels better." She didn't mean the calendar. She meant us. I still grieve the family I hoped I had, the version of them I kept trying to earn. But I chose my child's safety over approval, and for the first time in my life, that choice chose me back. So now I'll ask you, if you were in my place, would you have done the same? Comment 1 if you think I did the right thing. Comment 0 if you believe family should always come first. And if this story stayed with you longer than you expected, you already know why you're here.